ولو أن أهل القرى آمنوا واتقوا لفتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض
Bismillah. Can you hear me? Okay.
I think the mic.
Okay. Okay. We good?
Okay, so we good.
All right. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yaumiddin. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan marhaban bikum. Welcome to the Barakah Effect podcast, the podcast where we dissect wisdoms and inspirations from the Qur'an and Sunnah and turn them into our advantage to attain success in dunya and akhirah. Welcome once again to another episode of Treasures from Qur'an, where it's a special weekly series dedicating towards tadabbur and reflecting from some of our favorite ayah and surah from the Qur'an, and how can we at the brothers at the Barakah Effect, we take lessons from them and share with you how we practice them and how can we take practical lessons and inspirations from them to improve our day-to-day life. So Alhamdulillah, today is a special episode because today is a unique one. Normally we have one surah or a few ayat, but today is one ayat. Special, huh? So the special ayat, and that's why I choose to, in solidarity with our sharer speaker for today, I follow his hairstyle for today's session.
MashaAllah, barakallah feek.
MashaAllah. So you can see the uncanny resemblance with my neighbor here on my on my right here. Okay, so ahlan to you, MashaAllah.
MashaAllah. It looks good, Aki.
Oh yeah, MashaAllah. Happy to join the club, brother. My wife is partially balding, so I might as well just commit all the way anyway, right?
Yeah, MashaAllah. Join the club.
MashaAllah. Let's go, inshallah. Minimize the maintenance, huh?
Yes, correct.
Inshallah. So Alhamdulillah. So today's episode is not just any verse, but it's the greatest verse. And this greatest verse is from ayah number 255 from Surah Al Baqarah, also known as Ayatul Kursi. Okay, so mashallah, let's kickstart our session for today. So Brother Reeza, you chose this ayah for our sharing this week. Why don't you share with us why did you choose this particular ayah?
All right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I am quite surprised that we haven't chose this ayah in previous seasons. We have done this for maybe 3 Ramadans, but we haven't came across, or one of the brothers have not talked about this ayah. So alhamdulillah, for this year's Ramadan tadabbur sharing, this is the ayah I chose, Ayatul Kursi, which is the 255th verse from Surah Al Baqarah, and it's from the spirit of the tadabbur sessions that we try to inculcate, that during these tadabbur sessions we try to pick a surah or a verse that we come across quite often, so that we may reflect on them better during our daily practice. And Ayatul Kursi is something that is quite entrenched as part of our daily practice, to the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And inshallah, everyone would most likely be familiar with Ayatul Kursi. For example, if you just stop anyone in the street to recite Ayatul Kursi, I think almost everyone will be able to recite this from memory with ease. So inshallah, it's also a verse that we grew up with, that we as Muslims And for me personally, it's quite a prominent verse growing up. People used to say, right, if you are scared of something that is not known or otherworldly things, you just recite Ayatul Kursi and it will be a protection for you, right? And it has a basis in it. So, yeah, so that's why I chose this ayah. But at the same time, this is important ayah for us to reflect on because in a hadith related in Sahih Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam acknowledged this verse that to be the single greatest verse out of all the revelation from the Quran. Meaning that this is the best word out of all the words of Allah, and therefore it has a special status compared to all the other ayah in the Quran. And to be honest, when I was researching this ayah, I felt that special status of this ayah because compared to other ayahs that we have researched before, it felt kind of heavy with meanings and comprehension compared to the other verses, and it's not easy to do justice to talk about it, right? So today's sharing is only a humble reflection of what it meant to me when I came across this ayah as a tadabbur and not as a tafsir class per se. So perhaps as a follow-up, if anyone is interested, you could learn this ayah from your teacher or trusted teacher, inshallah.
So Reza, you mentioned about how often repeated this ayah is. So let's give a quick refresher about when are the sunnah of the day-to-day life that we recite this ayah.
Yeah. Perhaps around for the brothers, maybe you can enlighten the viewers on where the place is, where it is recommended, and perhaps maybe if you know the virtues of it related to those times, maybe it's good to mention as well. So perhaps we can do a round, inshallah. Where are the times and the places where we recite the Ayatul Kursi in our everyday practice in the Sunnah?
Before sleep, inshallah. Before sleep.
Right, correct. There
Before
is
you
one
sleep?
before you sleep. Yes, correct.
And before sleep is a big one because an interesting hadith. Okay, just to summarize the hadith, because it's a long hadith and very interesting storyline behind it because the one who thought this was actually shaitan, but it's confirmed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The benefits of this particular one before sleeping is huge because because basically Rasulullah affirmed that if you recite this before going to bed, then shaitan cannot approach you until the morning. So if you want to protect ourselves against like nightmares and things that basically haunt us throughout the day, the key to protecting ourselves is this ayah.
Yeah, mashallah.
Before sleep.
That's correct. Yeah, one time before we sleep. What about other times?
After Salah.
Perhaps after Salah. Yes.
Every compulsory
correct.
Salah. 5
Correct.
times.
Yes. So after every fard Salah, this is the sunnah to recite, and actually the virtue of it is very important. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that whoever recites this ayah after every fard prayer, there will be nothing standing between that person and entering paradise except death. So you just pause and reflect on this for a second. Like, is this just a simple practice after our salah, right? But the consequence is so heavy, right? But I always imagine, like, what if I missed reciting Ayatul Kursi after the salah? Perhaps Allah took away my life between Dhuhr and Asr, and then you miss out on this virtue that you can bring when you stand in front of Allah, that you can tell Allah that, oh, I have followed Rasulullah sallallahu sunnah that is according to what he mentioned, and I hope to get this to enter paradise, right? So that's quite important to me. I think as personally, we should not miss the adhkar after salat, but make it a point as a minimum to at least recite Ayatul Kursi after your salah. So that's one benefit I think that can be gotten from this particular hadith.
Yeah, make it a habit and make sure it must be like it's a commit yourself all the way, because like Reeza said, you don't know where you're going to die, and it could be that one salat that you forgot to recite this Ayatul Kursi, then the angel of death comes. Oh, subhanAllah, that's a big loss, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's worth reminding as well, especially sometimes for example, in Malaysia, the imam will recite zikir after prayer, right, in the mic, and then the followers will follow that. Sometimes they might not recite Ayatul Kursi. So
Yes.
because of that, then we thought, okay lah, dah settle the whole package, right? The whole cocktail,
The whole package.
the whole happy meal is taken, right? but that happy meal does not include this very important, the important ingredient, which is Ayatul Kursi. Right. So it's just remind ourselves,
mashallah.
even if the imam doesn't recite, you recite. Make sure you do it, because at the end of the day, the angel of death will pick your soul, right? So you have to be prepared for that moment.
Even if you are in hurry, maybe we can also recite it after we pray and we get up. We still can recite it, right?
Yes.
If we are in a hurry.
Correct. Yes. Actually, to be honest with you, this Ramadan, because work is very intense for me, so it's like that. I have salat, and then I have to recite Ayatul Kursi in the lift sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Still after prayer.
Correct.
Right?
Still after prayer, yes.
Because what Aziz said is the mental block that I had with last time. I thought like after prayer,
me too.
When you're sitting down. Oh, you also.
That's why I need to mention it right here.
It's a common misconception.
But actually, there's nothing wrong, right? Even if you get up
There's
while you're
nothing wrong with
walking in the car, right? Like just recite the
exactly.
zikir after prayer, right? Oh, mashallah.
Yeah, subhanallah. Yes,
We
so
don't
there's no
deny that
excuse
the
to
best
miss it.
is sit after salah, right?
Yeah, that's right. The best is to sit in your place. But then if you don't have time, as sometimes we find ourselves into, then we can also recite while walking, while standing, as long as you recite it after your salah. Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
This is a good benefit, mashallah.
Yeah. So there's one more. So we mentioned before sleeping.
So now we have
That's 6,
5
right?
after salah, and then 1 before we sleep. Now there's 6 times every day.
6 times per day.
Per day, yeah. What are the other times that is recommended? If the brothers,
So you will see inside the
at
book,
least.
in the day, Hisnul Muslim, they will always incorporate Ayatul Kursi inside the morning and evening dhikr, the adhkar, right?
Yes,
The words
this
of
is correct.
remembrance of morning and evening.
Yes.
So that's another one. So when you say after morning, it's like after Fajr, before the whole. There's some difference of opinion, but generally it's after Fajr, right? And evening is after Asr. Some say after Maghrib also still can. Some say that before Maghrib.
Yeah, that's right. So don't miss it every morning and evening as well. So when you see that in our practice daily, if we follow the Sunnah, there's so many places that we recite this particular ayah, right? But sometimes our recitation is just the recitation. We don't really internalize because we are so used to it. Becomes a mechanical, robotic thing that we are just going through the motions. But it's important as well. If not all the time, sometimes we have to stop and reflect what we are reciting in our dua, in our salah, that it has an effect on us, right? So, mashallah. So, any other places in the day that we can recite this, or is it in general that's it?
Maybe just to add, actually, the benefit of reciting in the morning and evening is similar to reciting it at night. So, basically, this hadith is narrated by Al-Hakim, says that reading Ayatul Kursi in the morning, you'll be protected from shaitan until the evening. And if you read it in the evening, you'll be protected until the morning. So you have, mashallah, a lot of protection from this one ayah, which actually takes like less than 1 minute to recite. And if you think about before you sleep, then you get, mashallah, even more assurance, mashallah, from Allah.
Yeah. So imagine that this is like a 24-hour protection. If we don't miss it, it's protection from Allah against all the jinn or the shaitan who is trying to tempt you or trying to, make you go other ways and all these things, right? So, mashallah. So in general, that's like around 8 times a day. So now that we know the correct times to recite Ayatul Kursi, make sure we don't miss it, or at least try not to miss it. It's a sunnah. It's not a obligatory action, but it's very highly recommended. And the virtues, as we mentioned before, is many and very important virtues.
Yeah. By the way, I did, since you asked just now, is there any other times that we did not mention? Maybe I tried looking it up. This is the one I found.
Actually, this is the one that we found.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's
So,
anything else, let us know in the comments. If
yeah,
there's
that's
anything
right.
else we miss, maybe we are missing on a huge reward which we don't know of. Allah, Allah, maybe.
Yeah, we'd love to know
share
that.
with us.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Okay, so mashallah, now we know the virtue, but have we ever thought? I mean, we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that Ayatul Kursi is the greatest verse in the Quran, but do you know why is the reason why it's mentioned as the greatest verse in the Quran?
Huh.
Anyone have an idea of this?
No. Tell us. I don't know actually.
Mashallah. Right. So, in principle, the scholar said, right, any ayah or surah that Allah describes Himself and He establishes the tawheed, the oneness of Himself, is that is what makes a verse elevated above others. You know, for example, Al-Fatiha. Why is it called Umul Quran, the mother of the Kitab, the Quran? Because it talks about Allah and the tawheed and all the rights of Allah inside Al-Fatiha, for example. Another example, why is Al-Ikhlas mentioned, the reward of reciting Al-Ikhlas mentioned like 1/3 of the Quran? Because it speaks of Allah's names and attributes. And so much so that in one hadith, one of the Sahaba likes to recite this in every raka'ah of his salah. You know, and Rasulullah SAW, he conveyed Allah's pleasure to the Sahaba because of this practice. So, as you can see here, what our scholars has collected and described that the reason why a verse or a surah that is elevated above others or becomes great is that because it contains the oneness of Allah and that He establishes the tawheed, the oneness with this surah or verse. All right. So, in Ayatul Kursi is arguably the greatest place where Allah establishes the tawheed, the oneness of Allah, right? And when we think about it, all of these different ayah that establishes the tawheed, the oneness of Allah, it's really like a great mercy that Allah revealed to us. This ayah is like when Allah teaches us this ayah, we learn about the greatness of who we are actually worshipping, right? And the effect of it is so much that it regulates the Muslim's life to be always upright and truthful, right? Because knowing the attributes and names of Allah, we know that, for example, right, Allah is as-Sami, He's all hearing. He is al-Basir, He's all seeing. We know that He hears everything and sees everything, and nothing escapes His seeing and hearing. So what we do, we try our best to control our tongues from speaking ill in public and in private. Now, that's something that you never will have with any regulation or law that is man-made, for example, because people would perhaps like comply with the law outside of the private space, but in the private space, they will do something that when people don't see, they are free to do whatever they want, right? But here we know that Allah sees and hears everything, and His knowledge encompasses everything. And therefore, for the Muslim, this is very important, and it gives that Muslim the quality of being always truthful in his actions and never deviating from what Allah likes and to what Allah dislikes. So this is actually an amazing benefit of the ayat from what Allah describes Himself with. So think about this whenever we come across Al-Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, Al-Ikhlas, that reflect on what Allah is saying and what is the effect or impact that it should have on us, right? So as we will cover today, we will see many places where Allah shows His greatness and His majesty, and yeah, so we will see inshallah in the coming explanation, inshallah.
Speaking of Tawheed as well, I think special thing about this ayah, special characteristic of this ayah is that it contains all three of the categories of Tawheed here. So
That's
there's
right.
the uluhiyah, the worship Allah, and the rububiyah, the lordship of Allah, and also His names and attributes, all
That's right.
incorporated here, right? So
Yes,
all three
mashallah.
categories of Tawheed here, right?
Yeah, so it's like very comprehensive, like similar to the Fatiha, right? Everything about Tawheed is in there that we need to know. So mashallah. So I was researching this verse, and there's so much meanings and deep reflections that we can have. So if we were to talk about each part of it, it would take many hours or even days to cover it. So for the interest of time and making it digestible for our benefit, we'll focus on perhaps some themes that are found in this verse, and more specifically how it relates to our everyday lives on when we reflect on it, right? So this is the intention for today's sharing, inshallah. Okay, so I guess we can start, inshallah.
Yeah.
Allah
let's go.
mentions in Ayatul Kursi, when he starts, he mentions Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. Allah, la ilaha illa huwa, there is no deity worthy of worship except him. He is Al Hayyu Al Qayyum, the ever living, the sustainer of all existence. So Allah introduces himself with this kalimah la ilaha illallah, which our scholars have said that this is the greatest word to exist, because the word is, if you think about it, it's very concise, but it's very heavy, right? Every prophet, every Rasul that Allah sent, their da'wah is none but la ilaha illallah, right? And it is the single reason why their people fought so harshly against them, because they bought this kalimah la ilaha illallah, and not because of anything else, not because of wealth, not because of worldly attributes. This is simply because to affirm that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. So imagine that the definition here of la ilaha illallah, the technical definition is la ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. There is no one worthy of worship except Allah. So here there is a negation. So no one is worthy of worship, and also confirmation except Allah. And these are the two pillars of la ilaha illallah. So the human fitrah, if you think about it, whether a person understands it or acknowledges it, Allah has made it such that it seeks and needs something to worship, because there is a void that must be filled with worshipping something. So it depends. A person can fill it with worshipping anything that they want, right? Other gods, wealth, fame, even themselves. For example, we see it a lot nowadays. Sometimes it depends on what's the latest trend, or what it changes all the time for many people, right? And it might give some form of happiness because it appeals to a person's nafs. It becomes a temporary joy, that perhaps when you do something, you worship your wealth, for example, it gives you a lot of happiness, a joy in the short term. But in the long run, it will never last, because that's why you find people becoming restless, they become depressed, and feeling unfulfilled despite having all of the materials that you could own in this dunya, right?
Because Allah created all human beings with the inherent need to
Inherent
worship
disposition, like natural disposition to
the
worship
fitrah.
Allah. There is a void of that, to feel that fitrah. So you can see
this,
a lot of
This is a good perspective, because as long as this void is not filled, then you'll always feel unsatisfied, right? You'll always look for something. So as you said, they will look for things like whether it's money or fame or followers or enjoyment, pleasures, but they will always feel it's not enough. Even if
it's
I
empty.
think the perception, the deceptive thing is, we look at it as if they're having the life, but actually deep down they are feeling empty, because they're not filling in this void
That's
of
right.
worshipping the one true creator.
That's right. Subhanallah. That's why we can see when sometimes we are shocked, right? That one day in the news, a public figure has a suicide, for example. When we seemingly see everything about them in the media, like they're happy, they're smiling, and they have a good relationship with everyone, but somehow something inside, this is something unfulfilled inside of the soul, that perhaps that drove them to that action, right? So a person can feel himself with everything in this dunya, but the soul, it's something that we understand very little about. It can only find fulfillment only with the worship and remembrance of Allah. So it's always pushing back if it's not filled with the worship and remembrance of Allah. And when it's aligned with the worship and remembrance of Allah, it becomes at ease and it becomes content, right? Allah tells us in the Qur'an, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal qulub." Only with the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. So this is essentially, you can say this is an open secret for the Muslims. When they find that they are aligned with the worship of Allah, sometimes you feel so content that this is what you are created for. And Allah mentions this is what we created for, to worship Allah. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah did not create jinns or ins or human beings except to worship Allah. So this is actually fulfilling our creation, fulfilling our purpose, right? To worship Allah. And that's why to fill our soul with La ilaha illallah, there is no one worthy of worship except Allah, this is like basically the essence of life, right? The scholar Sufyan ibn Uyaynah rahimahullah, he said about La ilaha illallah, that Allah has not bestowed a greater favor to his servant, to us, than acquainting them with La ilaha illallah. So consider yourself being granted a big favor when Allah allows you to learn or be aligned with La ilaha illallah. Why? Because this one statement is the difference between iman and disbelief, right? Between contentment and restlessness, between, most importantly, also heaven and hell. Yeah, right. It's the Sirat al-Mustaqim that we ask Allah in every prayer to guide us to. Like, for example, the uttering of this one statement brings a person from the darkness into the light of Islam, and it's very sensitive to take care of it, because it depends on how a person takes care of it. It either can take a person inside or outside the fold of Islam. So this simple kalimah has so much rights and depth of meaning that to talk about it in one session is you cannot do justice to it. It's a lifelong journey to know about La ilaha illallah, right? Yeah. And there is a particular hadith when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that man kana akhiru kalamihi la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. Have you heard of this hadith before? Yeah, it's quite a popular hadith. Whoever's last words are La ilaha illallah, he will enter paradise. Right? So this is the dream of every Muslim, to have the last words in his life or her life to mention La ilaha illallah. And this is why when we see a person facing sakaratul maut, the throes of death, right? It is the sunnah to remind them, speak of nothing else but remind them of these words, so that they
talqin. This is
talqin.
Talqin, right? Remind them, laqinu, right? Always remind them
correct.
to recite La ilaha illallah.
Yeah, correct. So in the hope that that person will also say it, right? And like it or not, I mean, me and you, everyone here in the audience at home, we will all face these moments, like it or not, when the angel of death will knock on our door and say, come out, your soul out of the body to return to Allah. It's a matter of when and not if, right? So but uttering this statement at that particular moment is not as simple as it seems, right? Before, if you've seen a person in sakaratul maut, you know this is a very, very difficult time for the person, because there's so many things happening. Your life flashes through, and essentially this is the most important moment in a person's life, right? Because from there onwards, each
sorry, I think there's a bit of a lag there.
Tafadhal akhi.
Yeah, mashallah, that's a good point. And this note, I remember this one book called Enjoy Your Life, where he said about this concept about saying La ilaha illallah before you pass away. It sounds like the simpler thing, the easiest thing to do, right? And something interesting about the phrase La ilaha illallah, it doesn't involve letters involving your lips. It's only your tongue. Did you realize that? You don't have to move your lips to say La ilaha illallah. You don't even have to. You can actually do the ventriloquism. You know ventriloquism, right? La ilaha illallah.
Without moving your lips, right?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now, like La ilaha illallah.
Yeah,
mashallah. Like camera trick, right? But anyway, the point is, it's very easy to say. But the point is, it's not about the physical ease of doing it. If you haven't been living your life with standing by this phrase as your principles and your values in life, and if you haven't been uttering it, what gives you the guarantee that you can say it at the point of death, when you have so many things on your mind, you have so many things you want to think of, so many things that you're worried about. So that's why they say, like you said, the life flashes before their eyes. The thing that matters to you the most, that will be occupying your mind. And if the things that matter to you the most is not la ilaha illallah in your entire life, that will not be the last thing that you say. And it's a very scary feat. It's a very scary thing to come to terms with. I remember the book Enjoy Your Life. The author Dr. Muhammad Al-Rifi, or was it another book by him? It's definitely by him. He's just sharing some stories about some real life encounters, like you said, on their deathbed. They cannot say it. They cannot say la ilaha illallah. They are Muslims. Some of them born Muslims their entire life. And then like there's one particular guy, he's only worried about wealth. So he says he's on his deathbed here dying. And he says, "Uncle, say la ilaha illallah." And then he's saying, "Okay, I'll give 2 million to my son, and then 1 million here. You can take the house." That's how he's talking about. He cannot say la ilaha illallah. Oh, that's scary. There's one house that he went to this house, and the music was playing so loud. And then then the sheikh came in and was like, why are you playing music? This guy, this brother is dying. He says, we tried to pray Qur'an, but he said he doesn't like it. So he wants to listen to the music. Then that soothes his soul. So he doesn't want to even listen to Qur'an or say la ilaha illallah, because he just wants to listen to music. So easier said than done, yeah? So things are, may Allah, subhanAllah, may Allah make us amongst those who are steadfast in living by this and saying it. Saying it in submission to Allah.
I mean, this is also very similar to the 3 questions of the grave. If you are familiar with it, the questions are quite simple and the answers are quite simple. But your ability to answer those questions, or the ability to say la ilaha illallah before you die, it's from the mercy of Allah, and it comes back to how truthful a person was, or how sincere the person was to this kalimah la ilaha illallah. Did they fulfill the rights of la ilaha illallah? Did they live their lives in accordance with la ilaha illallah? Right? So if you see, for example, if you've seen a person in Sakaratul Maut, you know that this is the most important, pivotal moment in that person's life. Because from there onwards, every person in their journey will be alone in their journey towards Allah. Forget whatever you have achieved in your life, whatever you have bought in your life, your jobs, even our family, our kids, none of that will matter. From that moment on, it's just you, yourself, and you will answer to Allah in your next journey, which is far, far longer from the journey in the dunya, right? And at this moment of the Sakaratul Maut, this is when the shaitan, he will come to you and intensify his temptations and whisperings to you, because he knows if that person fails in this moment, that person will be unsuccessful forever. And only that will be becoming worse and worse for that person, right? And he would have succeeded in his mission to take another person to join him in the hellfire. So this is, subhanAllah, something very important to reflect on. It is not a matter of saying a word, but how truthful you are to that word that matters in the time of your deathbed, for example. And we just should stop and think in every action. Did we choose, when it comes to a choice between what Allah likes or what we desire, we go with what we desire, or what Allah likes? Or, for example, a different thing, when the adhan is called in the masjid, especially for men, is it our normal practice to answer the call, to rush to the prayer to the masjid? Or is the attitude that, we have time, I'll do it at my convenience, or at a time when I'm less busy, for example? Is that your normal practice? So this is something to reflect on. There's so many consequences in our lives, in our actions, that comes back to la ilaha illallah, how truthful we were to upholding la ilaha illallah. And this is something that we should always reflect on continually and try to improve our sincerity to that la ilaha illallah, right? And to take care of it.
Can I add a point there?
Yeah, okay, Amir.
The way mashallah, I think that la ilaha illallah is the greatest kalimah ever, right? Like the way I would see it is like, imagine if we were to travel out of our country, what is the single most important document that we must have? We don't have to have anything else, but we must have this particular document. It's the passport, right? So
Okay.
Yeah.
nothing else matters. When you want to cross the border, the passport needs to be there, right?
Else you'll be stuck.
Yeah, you wouldn't care about anything else. If you come to another country without passport, that's it. You'll be caught. Yeah, you will get punishment. And how you want to make sure you have the passport near to you? Sometimes you put it in a bag, a sling bag near to your heart, reachable to you. You protect it from being dropped. Yeah, and that's for something that you want to ensure smooth transition to another place, and to avoid any punishment. And this is something that people will if they're not ready, if you don't have the la ilaha illallah with you, protected from harm and kept safe near to you, the harm is far worse. It's far bigger than any analogy we can give in this world.
Yeah, subhanallah. That's right. So this is really important to always hold it. I always put my passport in my pocket, especially when I'm traveling. So always keep it with you on your person, right? And it's also important to also strengthen our understanding behind La ilaha illallah. It's not just a simple word that you can just say without knowing the meanings behind it. The meanings behind it and the consequences behind it, this is very important as well. So it's on every Muslim actually to strengthen it by learning about what it means to uphold La ilaha illallah. So that when you have that knowledge, you know in a certain situation, you will have the strong resolve to adhere to that principle rather than if you don't know, then you might think that it's fine. But in actual fact, that might be a grave thing in front of Allah. Right? So it's important for us to learn about it, to strengthen it, and try and perhaps learn about a good way of doing this is to learn about Allah's names and attributes properly with a trusted teacher. For example, join a class about it. That it strengthens your understanding about the names and attributes of Allah, and as a result, it strengthens your adherence to La ilaha illallah. And trust me, it will bring so much peace and contentment, and it's like almost like the solution to all of your answers in your life. That perhaps this is an open secret that a lot of people don't know about. Learning about Allah's names and attributes gives you a lot of peace and contentment in running your life, for example. So it's something to perhaps think about, that we have to learn about these principles as well. Right. So in the following continuation of the verse, Allah teaches us of His names and attributes, and also in this verse He mentions Himself as Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum. So Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum is always mentioned side by side in the Quran. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that these are the greatest names of Allah, whereby if someone were to ask Allah by making dua with it, Allah will grant the dua to him. So pay attention that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that this is the greatest names of Allah, and if you were to make dua with it, Allah will grant your dua. This is also a very important tip when making dua. Ask Allah by His names Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum. And you can imagine the greatness of these two names of Allah. Our scholars such as Imam An-Nawawi, Ibn Uthaymin is of the opinion that it is the greatest names of Allah because it describes the perfection of Allah, which nothing else could ever be described with these attributes. So what does Al-Hayy means? It means the ever-living.
Sorry, just a side note, Brother Reeza. About the greatest names of Allah, there is difference of opinion. Okay, we know for sure that Rasulullah SAW said if you call Allah by His the greatest name, then He will definitely grant you what you ask for. So that is definitely there's no disagreement there. The disagreement is what exactly is the best name. So there are some scholars who say that the best name is Allah. Some of them say that the best name is Ar-Rabb. There's some of them say that it's Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. The Arhamur Rahimin, if I'm not mistaken. And then one of the opinions is Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. But this is definitely one of the strong opinions also. The point is the fact that it's up there. Of course, we should call Allah on all these names, but the point is that this ranks highly among one of the preferred names as considered the preferred opinions of the greatest name.
Yeah, mashallah. I mean, we can call upon Allah with many names, and there are many different sort of opinions as well. Some even say Allah is the greatest name. So, but looking at the different opinions, maybe the stronger one perhaps according to An-Nawawi and Ibn Uthaymeen is Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. So Al-Hayy here means the ever living and the one who has no beginning and no end. So everything other than Allah, His creation, has a beginning and has an ending, and will all be destroyed or perish one day, right? So Allah alone has this quality of Al-Hayy. And Al-Qayyum means that the one who is established or standing on his own, and he's the one who sustains and manages the complete creation at the same time without any need of sustenance himself. And in the next parts of Ayatul Kursi, Allah continues by describing his attributes, right? La ta'khudhuhu sinatu wala naum. Lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. Neither drowsiness or sleep overtakes him, and to him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. So he continues to tell us of his attributes, and he does not tire, he does not require sleep, and he is actually the owner of all of creation. So through all of these names, we learn that he is the only one who is ever living and sustaining everything, and is in control of all of his creation. So this is basically what encapsulates these names and these ayat. And it shows really that Allah's perfection, of his perfection, and every creature actually is, or creation is in desperate need for him to support. Every single thing we need, Allah supports. Else we have no means to survive or exist. You know, as we learned last week with Brother Aziz sharing of Surah Al Balad, Allah said of the human beings, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Right, Brother Aziz, we are created in toil. We are created weak. Right, the human in hardship. The human being, if you think about it, we have so many deficiencies. We need rest. We feel tired. We need nourishment to function in our bodies. And all of that we operate based on what was given to us exclusively by Allah. You know, for example, if we just take one example, our eyes, right? It is something that we desperately need to function properly. And we cannot imagine a life without it, but we did not attain it from our own efforts, except that Allah gave them to us, and He also sustains them for us, similar to whatever else we have, right? But sometimes, as is the nature of human beings, when Allah blesses us with a bit of a good life, with some knowledge, we tend to become haughty. We tend to forget that everything we are able to achieve, we are able to have, everything comes directly from Allah. Right? Allah mentions in Surah Al-Alaq, Kalla innal insana la yatgha ar-ra'ahu istaghna. Verily man is rebellious because he sees himself as self-sufficient. So sometimes we are blinded by, ease, that we feel that, oh, this is from my own efforts, this is from my own thoughts or intellect, right? So these are the inherent traits of human beings that Allah tells us about in this life, which we have to strive to purify our souls against it. Sometimes we start feeling self-sufficient, and sometimes we are impressed by our own ability that we forget to ask Allah and to make dua to Allah. And as we said, the reality is that every simple things in our life, even like the ability to speak now, Allah is the one who allowed us to have it. And therefore, when we reflect on that fact, we are always in desperate need of Allah's help in all situations. Right? So this is why Allah mentioned
about Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. This helps in a practical takeaway from this is it helps to reinforce our idea of tawakkul. So in Surah Al-Furqan, ayah number 58, Allah says, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ. Have tawakkul on Al-Hayy, which is this name, the one ever living, الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, the one who never dies. And I remember one lecture that I heard about this, good reminder, saying sometimes in this world, you might rely on people, even if they are trustworthy, they're resourceful, they are good, their integrity, they're competent, but they will die. You have a business partner, you have a good boss, you do all, and then subhanallah, they passed away. Even like this is a real case. My wife, her dentist, so she went to go do some dental work, and then she passed away. Then the dentist passed away. SubhanAllah, like the follow-up cannot happen.
subhanallah.
So this ayah reminds us that when we put our trust in the one who can never die, this should give us that hope, right? And the one who never dies is also Al-Qayyum. So what was the translation of Al-Qayyum, the one you mentioned just now? The easy translation?
The easy
Sustainer, was it?
translation is sustainer, the one who is established on his own and who sustains and manages everything.
Okay, the one who sustains and manages everything. So I think this is a good reminder about tawakkul here is that because we whether we realize it or not, we are interdependent beings, right? I mean, even with other human beings, we will depend on our parents, we will depend on a lot of individuals among us, right, to survive and to do a lot of things. And then Al-Qayyum tells us that the one we depend on, the people we depend on, actually they are dependent on Allah. Allah is the one who sustains them to help us to everything, all of our affairs. And He is Al-Hayy. And then He also does not get sleep and get tired, because there are people who we rely on, can be a king or whatever, your CEO or something. They also get tired, human beings, right? They also sleep. There are times where you reach out to them, they cannot help, even if they are very good, very very competent, very honest. But you know, they are human beings. They have weakness. But Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum does not have this weakness. So this reinforces that strength that, oh, don't worry, man, your affairs are in good hands. So that should give us that confidence.
Subhanallah, yes. That's why actually when we forget, right, from time to time, Allah wants to remind us that there's a certain level of assistance that people around us can give to us. Sometimes Allah puts us through some hardship and tests, and perhaps there is nothing that can assist that person anymore except the help of Allah. For example, a person tested with a severe challenge like a terminal disease or sickness that even the doctors say that you have X amount of days to live. The doctors are letting go, like they are cleaning the hands and then say that we can't help you anymore. And at that moment, then we will realize that when the person have exhausted every other avenue, in that moment he will have full sincerity in begging from Allah night and day to lift that affliction from him, and he will have full dependency and full tawakkul in no one else but Allah. But in reality, we should have full tawakkul in all times. But this is just a case to show that sometimes Allah shows us through different challenges that we have in our lives that no one else could help us but except for Allah, right? So it's important to reflect on that. And sometimes when it's put, hardship is put in our place, for the believer, if it changes that believer to become a better person in terms of his iman to Allah, it's actually a mercy from Allah. So some of the hardships and tests are actually a mercy to the believers, because this dunya are nothing but just tests in reality, and this is a series of tests, and each test reminds us that we are always going to return to Allah, and that we are always in utter dependence of Allah to do every single thing, no matter how small it is, right? So in that regards, we reflecting on this ayah, we should always depend on Allah for everything in our lives, no matter how small or no matter how big. When we make dua, when we make sujood, ask Allah for everything, for guidance, for ease in our affairs, because none can give that except for Allah. Some people are just means through it, right? And when we think about tests, right, Rasulullah SAW, he was the best examples for us, and he was the one tested by Allah the most out of all of us that he mentioned. And from that you find so many du'as that Rasulullah SAW used to say to exemplify his neediness to Allah and depending on none other than Allah. So perhaps one dua that we can focus on is the dua also to recite in the mornings and evenings, which was taught by Rasulullah SAW. It's a sunnah to recite every morning and evening, and exemplifies that embodiment of this ayah and the severe neediness to Allah. It also includes Allah's names Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum. So the dua is Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum bi rahmatika astaghith aslih li sya'ni kullah ولا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين. So if you look in the meanings of this dua, it's very profound, and it shows that Rasulullah, he exemplified his need to Allah. So Al Hayyu Ya Qayyum, he is asking Allah by his names. Bi rahmatika astaghith, by your mercy I seek protection with you. And here astaghith comes from istighatha, which is actually it's an action of the heart, which means that it is seeking protection and ultimate dependence on Allah, which this action could not be given to any other than Allah. So it's like ultimate dependence, astaghith, istighatha, right? And then he goes on to say, aslih li sha'ni kullah, rectify all my affairs, wala takilni ila nafsi tarfata ain, and don't leave me with myself even for the blink of an eye. So Rasulullah SAW is mentioning that don't even leave me to myself, to my own ability, even in the blink of an eye. Imagine that. So he's showing here that every single moment in our lives, we are in need of Allah's support to go to do whatever we want to do, to just even survive, to just live, right? So reflect on this beautiful dua, and perhaps we can incorporate it in our daily practice every morning and evening. And the takeaway from this is that we should not ever depend on ourselves. I mean, we can do the means, but the depending on all the achievement of whatever we are set out to do is with Allah. So we have to train our souls to depend on Allah in every situation, and also make it a habit to complain on our needs to Allah at all times. Subhanallah. So this is a reflection, this particular part of the Ayatul Kursi. Then Allah goes on to mention, Man dhalladhi yashfa'u indahu.
Since you were mentioning this, I just good reminder. I just remembered there's because just now you said this dua, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum rahmatika astaghith aslih li. This is the morning and part of the morning and evening dhikr also, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
In fact, actually, this dua, similar narration starts with this also. It is actually one of the recommended dua for those in distress.
Yes, it has the same wording, right? But it starts with Allahumma rahmataka arju. And then comes Fala takilni ila nafsi tarfata ain wa aslih li sha'ni kullah la ilaha illa anta. So it's a bit of a mixture of it. Yeah. But it's the same meaning. Yeah, same meaning.
See. So it doesn't start with Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum. All right.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So that is the dua for distress. As you can see in distress, this is where we should also amplify our neediness to Allah. Allah loves to see that neediness, that we show that neediness to Allah. Yeah. So mashallah. So on the next part of the verse, Man dhalladhi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'idhnih. Who else is it that can intercede with him except by his permission? So here it's mentioned as is ash-shafa'ah, means intercession. There's many types of intercession that will happen in the akhirah. Some by Rasulullah SAW, some by different people, family members, for example, who are pious, righteous. So that's a topic in itself. But we will be in desperate needs of shafa'ah in the akhirah, especially shafa'ah from Rasulullah SAW, right? And in this sense, the shafa'ah is asked by Rasulullah SAW, but the one who gives the permission of this shafa'ah is none other than except Allah. So in reality also, it comes back to the first reflection that we had, that whether we are under the pleasure of Allah or displeasure of Allah, that will determine where we would be able to attain the shafa'ah in the akhirah, right? So it comes back to the meaning of La ilaha illallah, that we always should strive to seek the mercy of Allah, so that also in the akhirah we stand, inshallah, to hope that we can get shafa'ah with Allah's permission, right? So it's a very big reminder for us to always be truthful in our actions and look for the pleasure of Allah in every action that we do, right? So
just one benefit for tadabbur. This particular phrase in this ayah is what you call a rhetorical question. So when Allah asks, Man dhal ladhi, who else? Who else can give shafa'ah except for his permission? So it's a question that it's not supposed to be answered. It's it's more like a, that's what you call rhetorical question. So there are lots of this in the Quran. Yeah. It's like what? Sorry?
It's like ask yourself this thing, for example, right? It's like reflect.
Yeah, so there are lots of this in the Quran where Allah asks, but the intention is not to answer. So for example, there's one very, very ayah that's quoted a lot. Am khuliqu min ghairi shay'in am huwal khaliqun. Are they the ones who are the creators, or did they create themselves? And then, so by the way, the answer is not one of the either one. It's neither one. Right? So the answer is Allah is the creator. So there are lots of this sprinkled throughout the Quran. So actually, we use that also in our day-to-day speech, and sometimes it's used to emphasize something, right? It's like an obvious remark that you just say it. There's no real answer.
It's
you just say
emphasizing. Correct.
to emphasize something, right? So maybe something like we say things like who the man? You're trying to imply yourself, right? Something like that. Okay, maybe that's not the best example in the world, but yeah, sometimes we ask that kind of thing, right? Sometimes we it's like sometimes it's used in a sarcastic ways also, but yeah, the point is just to emphasize the point.
Yeah, subhanallah.
And
here,
sorry, if I want to add something,
yeah, sure.
All shafa'ah belongs to Allah, even though we know on the Day of Judgment, there's many things that can give shafa'ah to everyone, right?
Correct.
It's like, and so you ask from Allah, you don't ask from other than Allah for that shafa'ah, because like Brother Reeza mentioned, it ties to the pleasure of Allah. If Allah allows that shafa'ah to go to a particular person, it's just like this. Like for instance, like when we're students, we are heavily dependent on our parents to give us money, right? So our parents bank into the account. Then, like let's say for some of us who are staying away from our parents during our tertiary education, so our parents bank in the money to the account, and then we go to the ATM machine, and then we key in our number in the ATM machine, and we get the cash. But we don't. If someone foolish goes to the ATM machine, please give me more money. That's foolish, right? That's foolish. Rather, you go to your parents. Right. Dad, I need more money. For Allah,
you go to the source of it,
much supreme. This goes to the source. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. The other people are the means of it, but the source of it is actually Allah, isn't it?
Yeah. Just a side note on this, very quick one. So some people are because what Amir said is principally correct. So then people will be wondering, so what's the point of having shafa'ah in the first place if it's all tied to whether Allah allows it or not in the first place, right? So the point is, it's not to change the opinion. Why Allah allows shafa'ah in the first place is actually to honor the one giving the intercession and the one receiving intercession. So for example, when Allah allows Rasulullah SAW to intercede for some of his slaves, number one, Allah is elevating the status of Rasulullah SAW by giving him the chance to speak on behalf of somebody else, right? So that's a huge honor already, right? And if, let's say, we are the ones who get that intercession, and may Allah make us amongst those, right, to receive the intercession of Rasulullah SAW, that means Allah is honoring us, that this guy is worthy of the intercession in the first place, no? And imagine if, because the intercession, like Reeza is saying, there's many levels, right? Even the righteous people can actually intercede for their friends and their family, right? So a beautiful hadith where the Prophet SAW said that, oh, these people used to pray with us, used to fast with us, come take them from hellfire, right? So then when Allah allows us to be that people, mashallah, that's a huge honor, right? That means Allah is giving us that status as a believer that you can actually have some extra credit to help other people. And then the fact that that people is being helped in the first place because of their connection with good righteous company is also an elevation among them. So actually it's an honor upon honor. So this is part of the mercy of Allah. It's not to change Allah's opinion. It's basically to honor them. And I think this is a very motivating point.
Brother Faizal's point there, because I think like when we talk about the topic intercession, before that, Allah just talked about Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum, right? And one of the meanings of Al-Qayyum is Allah doesn't need anything else. Allah himself, he decides and he plans and he owns and he makes everything at his own will. Nobody else will give any opinion whatsoever that will change his mind. Nothing. Allah himself, he decides on everything, yeah? Yep. So, and then it ties back to intercession because some people had the wrong idea of intercession. They think intercession is like the intercession that we done in the worldly life. Let's say if a king, because king has limitation and he can't manage every affair of his subject. So what he needs ministers to come say, oh, king, Amir asked for 10,000 ringgit. He's a good guy, he's a good guy. Maybe we should give him maybe half of it because he doesn't do this and that. But
Yeah,
the intercession Allah means is different. It's like what Brother Faisal mentioned. It's just to
yeah.
honor that particular middle guy. But every
Yes, yes.
decision comes from Allah. That middle guy doesn't impact even 0.001% of Allah's decision at all.
Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah.
Let me put another relatable example. I like the one about the king. So one example, very relatable, is like your employer, right? Your employer doesn't know every single person in the world, every single eligible candidate in the world. You have thousands of CVs to vet through, right? But maybe the intercession will help. Oh, I know this candidate. He's very good. X, Y, Z. Oh, really? Can I see his CV? Oh, then you put a spotlight on that. So that's one form of intercession, right? Why? Because that employer, that hiring manager, does not have the time and resources to go to vet through every single application, right? Because it's limitation, like what Amir is saying, right? But then the intercession helps to, okay, okay. Thanks for triggering me on this. But Allah is free from that. Allah is not. Allah knows everything already to begin with.
Yes, yes.
Mashallah.
Mashallah.
No cable.
Excellent examples on intercession because
Cable. That's right. That's the term.
Cable,
Cable.
yeah.
Good.
yeah, this is good examples because it's not easy to understand intercession in itself, and there's a lot of misunderstandings there. So, barakallahu fikum. Yeah. So, all right. In the next passage, Allah mentions يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ إِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. Allah knows what was before them and what will be after them. And none can grasp anything from His knowledge besides what He has permitted them to grasp. So in here, Allah mentions that Allah knows the past and the present and the future. And Allah's knowledge encompasses everything, right? Nothing is hidden from the knowledge of Allah. So just to put it into perspective, we spoke of tests before, right? And the reality is, in the dunya is nothing but tests. But at this moment when we think of tests, one thought that comes to mind is the thought of our brothers and sisters in Gaza, perhaps, entire families of theirs wiped out, their houses, they built being taken away forcefully. The world barely seems to blink and help them, right? So a lot of people would think that this is totally unfair, but yet they patiently endure, and we see them always content, and sometimes some are smiling, some have smiles on their faces, and people wonder where they get this strength from, right? This is the exact iman on this ayah like this. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. Allah knows what is before them and what will be after them. This is essentially the belief in Allah's qadr and predestination, that everything happens as Allah wills, and there is a hikmah to it. Even if you don't understand it or see it in the dunya, you will definitely see it in the akhirah, which will come shortly, inshallah. And they understand and they know full well that Allah has the knowledge of what is going on, and in Allah's other names, Allah is Al-Jabbar, the one who compels. One day, if not now, one day Allah will compel the evildoers and restore fairly what is lost. So there is no worry for the Muslim that if he loses something to oppression or injustice in this world. That's why you see them always content, because they know that this life is only a series of tests and temporary, and the real life is in the akhirah. Sometimes they are happy to receive this test because they know that this is a profound apparent means that Allah wants good for them, right? So they know that what Allah has in store for them, if they are patient, is far greater than they have to endure now. Allah mentions wal akhiratu khairu wa abqa. The hereafter is more everlasting. And also I'm reminded of the hadith when we did the tadabbur of Surah Al Kahf, when by the person with the worst hardship in this dunya, who was dipped with only one moment in Jannah, and he swears that he never experienced hardship ever before, right? So subhanallah, this is a reflection on internalization of the qadar of Allah, that perhaps you are also experiencing a difficulty that feels very heavy on yourself and that you keep only to yourself, but you just know that Allah has full knowledge of it, of what's past and what's in the future, and if we are patient, Allah will not waste the rewards of the patient, right? Allah mentions also in this ayah, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ إِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. No one can grasp anything from his knowledge besides what he has permitted. In reality, what we know of knowledge in this world is so little from the knowledge of Allah in His vast kingdom. Allah mentions in another surah, Al-Isra, the soul, especially on the soul is the affair of my Lord. Mankind has not been given of knowledge of it except a little, right? So despite knowing what we know now, there are so many things that is beyond our comprehension, and it is part of our iman to know that our comprehension is limited and we will not be able to understand everything. So to a certain point, we should leave everything with Allah, even though we don't understand it, right? The story of Musa and Khidir comes to mind in Surah Al-Kahf, whereby Allah tested Musa to be in companion with Al-Khidir, that throughout their time together, he did not understand what was happening when Khidir did what he did. But this is also a way of showing that what Allah gives knowledge to us is only limited. There are some things that we cannot comprehend, right? So essentially, this is a reflection of this ayah, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. So understand that our knowledge is
example of Musa and Khidir
small.
is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good one. So, for example, saying that Allah knows, and at the same time, in the context of this ayah, Allah is reminding us that in that story, very interesting story, that Allah revealed certain knowledge to Khidir and certain knowledge to Musa. So, certain knowledge that Musa, Khidir doesn't know, and vice versa. There are certain things that Khidir know, but Musa doesn't know. So, this is the emphasis of illa bimasha. So, Allah wills for certain people to have certain knowledge and certain people to not have knowledge. So there's a lot of benefit from that. And then if that's the case of the messenger of Allah, who is one of the ulul azm, who is definitely one of the most knowledgeable people on the face of the planet, especially in the matters of the unseen, if even that person doesn't have knowledge of some matters of the unseen where other human beings have, then what about you and me, right? So our knowledge is far more limited than that.
Yeah, subhanallah. That's a good thing to put it that way. Basically, even if the knowledge of Musa and Khidir, this is only very minuscule compared to the knowledge of Allah that we don't know. In one of the hadith, when but Amir.
Sorry, on the point, it's not like Allah knows what's in the past and what's in the future, right? So if you expand that, not just Allah knows what's in the past and what's in the future, Allah also knows if something Allah has destined for you. So something that Allah has not destined for you, and if theoretically you get it, Allah knows what's the outcome of that. So for instance, like in hellfire, right? The dwellers of fire, they regret for what they've done on this earth. They say, Allah, bring me back to earth. Yeah. Allah said, no, if I bring back you to earth, you'll do the same thing. Allah knows. So that cuts off all the shubhat of multiverse whatsoever, right? Only one life, and at junction of your life, there's always a lot of options of that you can take, and all that. What action you take is based on your will and Allah, and that's under Allah's will. And if whatever that's not destined for you, it's not meant for you. And if so, don't question what if this and that. That opens the whole shubhat of shaitan coming in and corrupt your mind. That doesn't mean that you don't introspect yourself to further improve and grow for room for growth, but rather you don't question things that does not happen to you in a negative, frustrating point lenses. Yeah, rather look at it. What I didn't do, and a room for how can I improve. Yeah, instead of blaming.
Mashallah.
Yeah, I like the point that you mentioned. You name drop the multiverse. I think it's good to emphasize that concepts like this fundamentally goes against our aqidah in qadar, actually.
Correct.
Because a lot of fictional media these days are reiterating this concept that there may be a parallel universe, that there is a Faisal who is born in Germany or something like that, parallel universe of the but and then people go to this wishful thinking about, what if, but actually all these things are wishful thinking. It doesn't benefit us in any way, and it's not even true, right? That's not the case. There's only this one timeline that Allah has destined, and Allah knows what's happened before and after. And like Amir re-emphasized, if it were to happen that way, Allah knows what happened, but it's not happening that way. This is what's happening.
Subhanallah. Yeah.
And so I think subtle things like this, people don't say it, right? But actually, it's actually goes against our akidah. So I think it's a good reminder for parents and even adults to ground ourselves in the right thinking of akidah when it comes to these faith matters.
Yeah, subhanallah. That's why we have to always be careful what we consume, because these things, it seems harmless. It comes up in movies that is popular in the popular media, and it seems like something harmless. It's like a make-believe thing, right? But it actually has an impact on, when we come back to La ilaha illallah, it has an impact on that. Because when you start saying you want to manifest this in your life, just because you manifest it in your life, this is against our akidah, and it goes against La ilaha illallah, and it will impact on the ability to say La ilaha illallah when we live our life. So we have to always be careful. That's what I mentioned. Taking care of La ilaha illallah is not easy, because there's a lot of hurdles that we find in this dunya that seems harmless, but if we don't have knowledge about it, we willingly say things that goes against the correct akidah of the Muslim towards Allah. So it's something that we always have to be careful and learn about always.
Can I have one more point on the knowledge just now? Because this was talking about knowledge, right? Because when you talk about, like, one of the fitnah of knowledge is actually it makes people arrogant, regardless what knowledge, worldly knowledge, religious knowledge. It can be a slippery slope that make people a bit more arrogant. But we know all knowledge is from Allah, and Allah decide who He gives that knowledge to. Just like how Allah decides to give who's that rizki is gonna end up in whose hands. But of course, we go for the means to acquire knowledge. But at the end of the day, Allah gives that knowledge to you or not. And think of this: between humans, we might have the most brilliant of mind. The knowledge we have is nothing compared to the knowledge that the angels have. They have seen the universe, right? Bigger, the Milky Way. They probably have seen it, definitely. But when there's something they don't know, and Allah asks them about something they don't know, they say, no, we don't know anything except for what Allah has taught them. That's humility. That's something that we can.
That's something to exemplify from what the attitudes from the angels. You stop where Allah, where our limitations are, right? And I like that you mentioned the Milky Way, because we will talk about it inshallah in a bit. In the next phrase of the Ayatul Kursi, which is the last part.
Sorry,
Allah
mentioned. One more thing. I like this point. There's a lot of benefits you can take from this portion. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. That you cannot grasp anything of knowledge except what Allah's will. So number one, the things that Allah has revealed to us from the ghaib through His prophets and eventually arrived to us. So He revealed to Rasulullah SAW and to us. It's only a small fraction of the ghaib. It's not everything. So what Allah reveals to us is just enough for us to worship Him. Right? That's the most important things. There are many other things of the unseen that we don't know. Right? For example, let's talk about angels, right? Angels. There's not only 10 angels. People think there's only 10 angels. Oh, no. Like, in fact, perspective-wise, one very profound narration, Rasulullah SAW said there's, what's the place name called again? There's a place...
Baitul Ma'mur.
Baitul Ma'mur. Yes, mashallah. That's the one. Yeah. And then the narration says that every day there are 70,000 angels who make tawaf around that, and they will never come to that place again. Wow. Think about it, Yes. So in 70 days, there's 4.9 million angels already. How many years? Can you imagine how many angels are out there? Millions and billions. And in fact, there's one narration that says that there's no even one hand span distance, except that there's an angel inside. And the heavens are about to creak because there's so many of them. That's what the narration says. There's so many of them. And yet we only know what? How many? Less than 10 names actually. The authentic names of angels, we only know 10. So it's not important for us to know all those names, right? Because it
Yeah,
doesn't help us
subhanallah.
in our worship. There are some of that it's helpful for us, but some no, not really. So I think this perspective should keep us humble. I mean, you barely know anything, especially like
Yeah.
religious knowledge, right? You just know
Mm.
enough for you to worship Allah. So there's no reason for you to be arrogant, lah. You know, get back on the ground, my friend. You know. Okay, so that's
Correct.
number one.
Mashallah,
Number two,
mashallah.
I think one of the things motivational about this ayah, this portion of the ayah, that Allah only grants knowledge to those who wills. If you have an understanding of religion, even if it's a little bit, that means that Allah has will for you to understand that in the first place. And that means, if you take the context of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man yuridillahu bihi khairan yufaqihu fi din." Whoever Allah wants good for, He grants him an understanding of the religion. So if you know a little bit of religion, like if you know how to, even simple things like you know how to pray 5 times a day, you know how to recite Ayatul Kursi, this is a sign that Allah wants good for you. And this should motivate us, because if Allah wills, He can withdraw that knowledge. Some people who can learn day in, day out, recite and Ayatul Kursi, they cannot do it, right? Maybe
Yes.
some people are like that. But if you can do it, oh, mashallah, this should make us feel that sense of honor and humility that, wow, Allah has opened my heart to receive this knowledge. That means Allah wants good for me.
Mashallah.
Because Allah did not grant this knowledge to everyone. Oh, mashallah. So
Mashallah.
there's another way to motivate ourselves.
MashaAllah. Well put, Brother Faisal and Brother Amir. You know, you speaking of angels, and it's Ramadan, you know, during Laylatul Qadr, it is mentioned that the angels descend during Laylatul Qadr, that you cannot find an empty space. That's how much the volume or the numbers of angels are there. And it is not even all of the angels, right? Subhanallah.
It's not even all of them, yeah.
Subhanallah.
Inshallah.
Okay, so inshallah to the next one. Allah mentions in the final part of Ayatul Kursi, wasi'a kursiyuhu samawati wal ard wala ya'uduhu hifdhuhuma wa huwal aliyyul azim. Allah's kursi extends through the heavens and the earth, and it does not weary Him to look after them, and He is the all high and the supreme. So here, the kursi of Allah is what this verse is named with. And this is the footstool of Allah. Basically, the scholars have mentioned that this is the second greatest creation after the Arsh of Allah. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said in explaining this verse that the 7 heavens in comparison to the kursi of Allah is nothing like a ring thrown in a desert, right? And the Arsh compared to the kursi is like the desert over that ring. So it's like a ring on a desert and a ring on a desert on the second level, right? So just imagine that. Just want to reflect that for a second. Has any one of you like been to a proper desert here? Maybe Brother Amir, you've been in Algeria, right? You're working there. It was as the desert, or you guys have been to the Middle East, for example. Yeah. There is a place in the Middle East. Yeah, big deserts there, right? Middle East, there is a place called the Empty Quarter, right?
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of the most deserted and desolate places on earth, whereby it's between Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Yemen, which is like such a huge size that is mostly uninhabited, right? There is nothing there but just desert for thousands of kilometers. Around here is 650,000 square kilometers to be exact. Now, imagine throwing a ring that you have in that desert and you go away for some time and then you try and find it again without any technological devices, yeah? It's basically impossible to find this ring, right? This is nothing except for the thousands of kilometers of desert. This ring is just like the size of your hand, right? So even if you were to throw a ring in the backyard outside your house, I don't think you'll find it anymore.
Yeah, true.
Right? So just imagine that the 7 heavens, this is the 7 heavens compared to the kursi of Allah, it is like that ring to that deserts. Right? And the kursi is like the ring to another desert to the arsh. Subhanallah. Like, the scholars also mentioned that, you know, what we can perceive in this dunya is only the lowest heaven of the seven heavens. It's as-sama ad-dunya. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, brothers. This is what we can see and perceive and achieve in this dunya, for example, what we see. So, I mean, if you've looked at the sky and wondered how vast it is, I came across a video from NASA which explains the vastness of our universe, of our solar system, right? Zooming out from Earth to show what's the relation of Earth between different planets and the sun and the solar system. And essentially, if you think about it, okay, I'm going to go a bit scientific a bit here. You know, space is measured by light years, right?
Okay,
this is
Reeza is going engineering mode.
engineering mode.
Full engineer.
I think the brothers here can understand. But not Star Trek, not fantasy.
It's grounded in reality.
Well, I have to ask the viewers out there to excuse us because I mean we are all engineers. Maybe we can understand, but maybe okay. I'll try to make it as simple as possible, right?
So geek mode on for all of us. Actually, in fact, mashallah, all four of us in this stream right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Subhanallah. Okay.
Right. So the measurement of the distance in space is measured by light years, and this is actually by definition the distance light travels within a period of time, within a year, for example, right? And if you think about it, the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second in a single second. So imagine 1 second like this, the light travels 300,000 kilometers, right? That's a way journey that I don't know we can comprehend that at the moment. But okay, here when you compare it to relative to the sun and the earth, how far it is that it takes 8 light minutes for the sun light to reach the earth. You know, which Allah, the distance is also another point of reflection is that Allah has sustained this perfectly, that 1 inch closer or 1 inch further, the earth would be perhaps uninhabitable. It would be maybe too hot or maybe too cold, for example. So it's just the right amount of distance for us to live the correct life or a comfortable life in the world. But that's another topic for another day. So back to the measurement of light. So the distance between Earth and the sun is about 8 light minutes. So 8 minutes, right? So 1 light day, if you think about it in kilometers, is about 26 billion kilometers. Billion, right? And the standard measurement, 1 light year, is about 9 trillion kilometers. That's a lot of zeros. SubhanAllah. Okay,
can I just put one fact there? The Earth diameter is 12,000 kilometers.
12,000. Ah, okay. So it's not even a second of light second. Not even a light second. Yeah, subhanallah. So you put it into perspective. Our sun and the earth, when you compare it to our galaxy, the Milky Way, right? We always hear of the Milky Way. From end to end of the Milky Way, it takes 100,000 light years.
Wow. There you go.
100,000 times 9 trillion kilometers.
Wow.
I don't know what measurement that is anymore.
Your brain cannot compute.
Too many zeros.
Too many zeros.
Your brain cannot compute.
That's right. One galaxy, yeah? One galaxy.
Yeah. Our neighboring galaxy, this is called the Andromeda galaxy. It is around 220,000 light years wide. 220,000. Twice
the capacity, yeah?
And another galaxy is 4 million light years. 4 million times 9 trillion.
40,000 times more.
Subhanallah. And according to what I read in the NASA website here, based on the deepest images obtained so far, so this is what has been perceived by let's say instruments, right? There are about 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Okay. This is underline the word observable universe. So this is something that the humans can observe. There are about 2 trillion similar or wider galaxies like our Milky Way, which is like minimum 100,000 light years.
Calculate that?
I don't know how they calculate that, but this is subhanallah. This is I cannot brain this fact.
I can't believe how do you want to link that to natural selection. You're like, wow.
I don't know. Subhanallah. and all of this, right? When you think about it, Wallahu a'lam, this is all only the as-sama ad-dunya, the lowest heaven.
Mm.
First heaven.
One.
There's seven heavens, and you compare this to the 7 heavens to the size of the kursi, it's just like a ring in the desert. I don't know what to think of it. It's just unthinkable, unimaginable. So here you see that the comprehension or the faculties of the human mind is very limited, and to Allah belongs the best of examples that Allah's galaxy is wider than you can ever imagine. Just like heaven and hell, this is you cannot imagine this type of things, right? Because this is knowledge that is not given to us by Allah from the al-ghaib, from the unseen. So what we should do is just to have the belief that Allah has his kingdom is vast and majestic that we cannot even start to comprehend. Don't even think about it. How the arsh size of it, and this is beyond human comprehension, right? So with that, we can even start to digest, like the ring in the desert parable actually really hits somewhat makes sense to us at the moment, and like with our limited minds right now. Subhanallah. It's just
Sometimes if you manage the size of your household, you're so overwhelmed, you're so tired, you probably need 8 hours of sleep every day, right? And Allah is managing this vast universe without any sleep.
La ta'khudhuhu sunatu wala naum. Subhanallah. Yeah. Akhi Faisal?
Yeah, the phrase "ring in the desert." Maybe okay. There's a phrase in English that pictures something insignificant. Do you know what that phrase is? To show something so small. Do you know what that phrase is? The phrase is a drop in the bucket.
Right? Okay. A drop in the ocean.
This? Drop in the bucket or drop in the ocean, right? So a drop in the bucket, right? You can imagine you have a bucket, right? It's drop, and you say, what's the difference going to make, right? You put like maybe a drop of vinegar or a drop of honey inside. It's not gonna change the water. It has no impact, no significance, right? That's considered not significant. But a bucket is it's small, right? If you compare like a soft toy you put inside a swimming pool, okay, let's say you put a ring in a swimming pool, right? If you drop your ring there, say if your ring the color is not significant, you probably cannot find it already. Right? Subhanallah. It's a swimming pool, right? This is a desert, right? Because I think when you mention like square kilometers, people cannot wrap their head around it already. It's too much, right? But swimming pool is not that big, right? But still, it's gonna be like it's so small already, cannot find already. Right? So imagine this house, and so ring in the desert. Basically, it's whole 7 heavens is that one ring. In that one desert, that's the kursi, and the kursi to the arsh. The kursi is a ring in the desert of the arsh. That's amazing.
That's amazing. Incomprehensible. So the benefit from this, right? Nowadays is a lot of information is more accessible to us from the different technology, advances in technology, like the knowledge that we just spoke about before was not known maybe just 50 years ago, right? So the signs of Allah are much more apparent to us now, and the benefit from this, that what we can derive, is that we always should look at these signs and always reflect, and upon that reflection, that should increase our iman to Allah, right? Allah mentions in Surah Ali Imran, Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahar la ayatil li ulil albab. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and day are signs for those of understanding, the ulil albab, who use their reasoning. And in the next ayah, he mentions who they are. Allah mentions who they are. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهُ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. They are the ones who always remember Allah, whether they are standing, they are sitting, or lying on their sides, and they give thought to the creation of the heavens and the earth. Right, so it's a good thing to reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth, and then they say, "Oh Allah, you did not create this aimlessly for no reason. You are pure are you, exalted are you above such a thing." And uh, and in the final dua, protect us from the punishment of the fire, because they realize their iman increased, and then their beliefs just increased, and then they ask protection from Allah for their safety in the akhirah. So this ayah, it shows the consequence of and the impact of having reflected on the signs of Allah, which we should do a lot. And because we look at that, I'm not sure. I perhaps we can share the video later. The video is much more clearer. We become humbled by His Majesty, and can't help but fall into the submission to Allah. Asking Allah for forgiveness and safety in the next life. So
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
I want to echo on this point. I like this point. Whenever this is a benefit that we can take when we watch, modern documentaries now, we can look at it with the admiration that, mashallah, this is the amazing wonder and creation of Allah.
yeah,
And
subhanallah.
when you approach it with this mindset, like the ulil albab that was mentioned in Surah Al Imran, right? Then that would elevate your level of iman. Now, this is interesting because a lot of modern scientists these days, they go the opposite direction. The more knowledge they have, the more arrogant, like what I mean mentioned, the more haughty, the more arrogant they feel, right? The more, oh yeah,
Correct.
we know, we can understand how everything works. And then they go
Yeah.
into the opposite, where like, oh, there's no creator, all this happens by chance, all these things. So subhanallah, but that's totally opposite. In fact, actually, knowing the vastness of this should actually make you more humble and realize that. So the
Correct.
believer, so we can benefit from watching those other documentaries and so on. And mashallah, there's a lot of really amazing stuff on YouTube. I remember seeing this channel called Epic Spaceman. Very interesting. He likes to put all these perspective into real life. Like he put like an entire galaxy into the size of one cereal, and he fills up an entire pool and see whether that pool gets filled up. That's really
Okay,
cool.
nice.
Yeah, interesting. So the galaxy is one cereal, right? And then can go check it out. But anyway, yeah. So the point is, when we believers as ulul albab, we look at it to humble ourselves. That's a totally different. And I like this because, and then when you watch like things with your children, you can tune them towards this mindset. You know what I mean? They can influence them.
Yes.
Oh, mashallah, look at the amazing creation of Allah. We are so insignificant, and yet still Allah cares for us. Allah loves us. That kind of, it helps us tadabbur in this sense.
Yeah, subhanallah. And even not just outwardly to space, but even the smallest creation of Allah, for example, the fly. If you were to see the mechanism behind how the fly is, for example, it has so many like eyes and whatnot, and it's very complex in its creation.
Yeah,
Subhanallah. This is from the smallest thing to the largest thing. There are so many signs out there that only if we just pay attention and we give thought, that these are all signs of Allah, right? And that always should humble us in submission to Allah. So this is another benefit of looking at the signs, and this is part of the Tawheed of Rububiyah, the kingdom of Allah, the oneness in the kingdom of Allah. That it's just Allah does not tire to maintain all of these complex systems and different creations of His, which we cannot fathom because our knowledge is just very limited, very small, right? So, subhanallah. That's why in this surah, this is very comprehensive in meanings, that whatever we touched on today. Before that, any other points from the brothers on those last part of the ayah you want to add before I conclude it? Okay, so basically this surah, it's so full of meanings, and if only we were to reflect on it, there's so many benefits about Allah, about His kingdom, about the oneness of Allah. And the fact that it is recommended for us to recite it many times daily with a lot of virtues in our lives, we should always, when we recite it, stop and reflect on the words of Allah, and perhaps focus on particular parts of this verse and just reflect on it, right? And contains amazing meanings about the greatness of Allah. And really, it is befitting to be called the greatest verse from the Quran, because it's all about the tawheed of Allah, His oneness in His ownership over all of creation. He sustains it and maintains it without feeling tired, and His oneness that He is the only one deserving to be worshipped. That is the rights of La ilaha illallah. And His oneness in His names and attributes, that none other from the creation has this quality. For example, Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. No one is ever living. No one is sustaining everything else in the universe. So this single verse contains so much meanings and amazing benefits for us that if we were to reflect regularly, mashallah, I think it has a lot of benefit for us in our life. And that we always come back to that the knowledge that Allah allows us to comprehend is in fact very little, but as Brother Faisal mentioned just now, the little knowledge is enough for us, inshallah, to worship Allah as He should be worshipped. And so the next time you recite Ayatul Kursi in your daily practice, just stop and reflect the meanings and implications of it. So Wallahu A'lam. Any of the brothers have anything additional to add to that? Otherwise, we can conclude, inshallah, the sharing today.
Okay, anything from Aziz, Amir?
Maybe inshallah I can share some of my what I've learned from today. Yeah. Just like Reeza concluded just now, the first thing is we should really realize that our knowledge is very, very small compared to Allah, right? So I think the point that you guys make, that we should focus on what Allah has taught us and trust Him for everything. We shouldn't worry about ourselves about the things that Allah doesn't. For example, the metaphor or the likeness of, you said, the desert and the ring. We don't have to really put our thinking about it. Like this. So the kursi is like this. So I think we should put our 100% rely on Allah's knowledge and what have He taught us, and stop at where He stops, and what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the companion stop. Because we have philosophers and so many sects that love to talk about things that that is, they say, a secret in the secret. I mean, Russia dan Russia, right?
Yeah.
And
most of the time they're just
second thing
talking about things that are just made up most of the time.
Yeah, but I don't
That
understand
seems
how
plausible,
they
but
can
it
be.
might be plausible, So
Mhm.
yeah,
So we should put our trust in Allah for everything, especially knowledge. And the second one is about how big is the universe, right? We should realize how small and weak we are. That Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum, He's the one who take care of the whole universe. And then when I think about this one, we should feel humble, because we are stressed out when we manage our office thing, our work, and our life, right? Our children. You see, we should. This really should make us really humble and reminds us we always need Allah's help. And the last thing is that the key to Jannah is La ilaha illallah. No matter how good deeds we do, we must live by La ilaha illallah. I think that's all for me. Inshallah.
Mashallah. Barakallahu fiqh.
Inshallah. Okay, Amir?
Yeah, this is the small world, so insignificant small world, which is this is the most human being put on the entire effort for this little tiny dot on Earth, where people do killings and robbing and stealing just for benefit, some small benefit on Earth, which is so small. I think if we catch the universe on a photo, I think it's much smaller than 1 megapixel, right? Of the Milky Way. That's how insignificant is this world. Doesn't mean we abandon it. We do it. That's how Allah has set the guidelines, and we work within that guidelines. We don't have to. There's really nothing to be jealous of, to be greedy of, and it's and because Allah mentioned, if really, even if on this world that really matters something, Allah would never give drinking water to the disbeliever. That's how insignificant the world is, and we are insignificant as well. Trust us, if we come and we go, meaning we die, the world will still turn as it is. Everything will go back to as usual. Maybe our family members will mourn at us for a few days, but that's about it. The world goes on. So, but don't miss out. We should not miss out on the greatest benefit, the greatest reward. And to do that, it's the path is there, and it's about la ilaha illallah and fulfilling the conditions, the preconditions of that particular kalimah, la ilaha illallah. And inshallah, may Allah grant all of us make people of Jannah without hisab and azab. Yeah.
Ameen. MashaAllah. Just one interesting, I just crossed my mind right now. The last part, after it says, wasi'a kursiyus samawati wal ard, and Allah says, wala ya'uduhu hifdhuma, right? It doesn't tire him to guard this, right? Interesting, because did you mention this one? Like, it doesn't.
Actually, I didn't. I missed it, but yeah.
Oh, no wonder. I was waiting for it. Yeah, because it's interesting, because people think, oh, there's so many creations, right? So many stars, so many things. And subhanAllah, like we in the oil and gas industry, right? We say that, oh, if your platform has so many equipment, so difficult to maintain, so challenging, right? To keep it online and a lot of things. So the more things you have, the more difficult it is, right? But to Allah, it doesn't tie him at all. It doesn't wear him down in any way whatsoever. So I'm thinking, why is there so many stars? Why? It doesn't matter. It doesn't tire him at all.
Yeah.
So I think this is amazing, right? So they should instill in us this feeling of awe, right? This feeling of magnificence, marvel in Allah Azza wa Jal's excellence, right? Superiority over His creation, mashallah. So, mashallah. So, thank you, brother Reeza. Jazakallah khairan for sharing for today's session. I hope that this session has been beneficial for all of us, and especially our listeners out there. And because it's a surah that this is an ayah that we repeat a lot, as we mentioned just now, right? At least 8 times a day minimum, probably many, many more. But in these 8 times, try to pick some ideas that you mentioned today. So, for example, like what Aziz shared just now was just about the importance of la ilaha illallah and knowledge. So when you recite it, you remember these concepts, right? Then when you mention about like what Amir highlight about the insignificance of ourselves, when you recite this, you think about that, right? You tadabbur upon this. So you don't just do it like a mechanical recitation after prayer, right? Put a lot more mindfulness and thought into it, and this will definitely elevate the quality of your relationship with Allah. So mashallah, jazakallah khairan. So inshallah, that ends our session today from Treasures from Qur'an. So tune in again next week, inshallah, at 11 a.m. Malaysian time. So next week we'll be sharing by Brother Amir. So Amir, do you want to give some spoiler or some sneak peek to what you're going to share next week?
Just see that.
So
I keep it for next week then.
Okay, wait. I know the perfect sneak peek for this, right? Right? Yeah. So when I talk about its vastness, right? Talking about science, right? Not science fiction, science, right? They always say the concept of space and time, right? So today we spoke a lot about space. You get it?
Right.
Next week is the other portion. We'll be speaking about time. Okay.
Nice.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
mashallah.
Spontaneous kind of thing. So it's a surah that has something to do with time. Oh, I gave it away, didn't I? Okay, mashallah. I think a surah that all of us very familiar with. I recite a lot in Salah. And in fact, it's a surah that's practiced by companions after ending every gathering. Okay.
Okay.
Giving away a lot now. Huh? So you should figure it out by now, inshallah. So we'll meet next week, inshallah, to discuss this special surah about time with Brother Amir. Catch you next week, next Sunday, on our session with the Barakah Effect podcast, on our session on treasures from Quran. So may Allah Azza wa Jal grant barakah in this sharing today and continue to make it a means for upgrading our ibadah throughout Ramadan. And may Allah Azza wa Jal make us amongst those who make the best out of this Ramadan, and make us amongst those who finish Ramadan on the best note, right? To continue improving upon them. Not battery draining, not less and less quality, but even more, so that we can finish better throughout this end of this month. Okay, so we see you then, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.